You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 49 of the DCAU Review. I'm your host, Cal, and with me my good brother, the DCAU Review Twitter guru, it's Liam. Liam, welcome to episode 49 of the DCAU Review.
Yes, we are smack dab in the middle of our Elseworlds Batman month. Last week we took a look at another episode of the Brave and the Bold cartoon. This week we are tackling a whole different animal. That being the 2004 to 2008 running The Batman cartoon that aired on Kids WB. Completely different animal, completely different type of Batman on this show. And really a very unique look to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my recollection of this. So when did this debut?
2004.
2004, okay. So it was after Justice League had ended, but around the time Justice League Unlimited
Yes, I believe
was
Unlimited
off.
also premiered in 2004. So this was kind of like a golden time if you're a DC animation fan, because you had Justice League Unlimited, Teen Titans was still going at this point, and you had The Batman debuting as well. So 2004, good year.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good time, as you said, to be a DC animated fan. It is, as you said, very different in a lot of ways than what we're used to. And we talked last week when we were in the Batman Brave and the Bold universe about its homage being a straight-up homage to Silver Age. So you have some familiarity if you've ever read the old Silver Age comics, then you kind of have some familiarity of what they're going for with the theme and the general mood of that series. This is its own sort of creation. It has big shoes to follow, and obviously in the Batman the Animated Series, going from that and the whole world that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and Alan Burnett and all those guys created to kind of trying to do their own thing. Now, we do note that Glenn Murakami is a producer on this episode, and I think you said that Alan Burnett was involved.
Yes, definitely in the later seasons. I assume he was still working on Justice League at this point, so I don't know if he was super hands-on. The sort of head producer and also the guy who designed all the characters is a guy named Jeff Matsuda, who probably before this, his most famous project was the Jackie Chan Adventures cartoon, which also ran for several years on Kids WB just prior to the Batman starting. So, and you could see a little bit of that influence. It's not quite like Teen Titans, which had like very overt anime influences to it, but this does have a sort of definitely has an Eastern animation feel in certain parts. Certainly the designs, some of the technology that's used.
Certainly.
That certainly comes through. And
it's a combination. I guess it's straight digital animation, but they use some, I guess, enhanced digital animation when it comes to some of the vehicles and some of the tricks they'll use. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, if we ever dive further into this with the Batmobile and stuff like that. But my initial thoughts will start with plot. So we are reviewing the very first episode of this, which is Bat in the Belfry, and it is a Joker story, which feels comfortable, which is good. But as you mentioned, this is a different Batman. We learned very early on in the episode that this is Batman's third year of being Batman. It's the third anniversary of him being Batman, and it's familiar in that you know Batman, of course, and there's Alfred, and his dynamic of relationship is there. And I think since Batman and Justice League and the DCAU version of Batman has been off the air for so long now, it's you get comfortable with the idea of there being other sort of iterations of Batman. But at the time, I can remember this being, and if you look at it, it's sort of a stark contrast between this and the Batman that you're familiar with.
Yeah, definitely. As far as a traditional Batman show, this is the first. Obviously, Batman Beyond had happened. You know, you had the Justice League shows where he was, more of a, could be more of a supporting character, but Kevin Conroy was always with us throughout those shows, and that continuity is there. This is sort of, striking out on its own to be its own separate universe. It doesn't connect to the DCAU, obviously. It doesn't really connect into the Teen Titans world in any way. It's completely its own animal here, and it's brave. Like, I'm sure that was a daunting task to try to follow up, and I know they speak to that, and as far as the designs of some of the characters, some of the ways they interpret certain villains, they did tried to do things a little differently just to try to steer clear of having to be directly compared to some of the great episodes of the original Batman animated series.
So we're going to change things up. We're going to start out by talking about visuals and animation instead of plot. We're going to call an audible here.
All right.
So let's talk a little bit. This is completely new. It's episode 49, and we're doing something completely different. It's crazy.
History.
That's
History,
right,
folks.
It's our show. So as far as the way that they went about the look of things, I think we can start there. Batman has a shorter ears in his cowl, so we're going back to the traditional shorter-eared Batman style, I guess. It's hard to tell what era this is in. You have a lot of modern technology, but it's sort of like pseudo-modern. It looks like it could be 90s technology. Maybe
he's got like a Palm Pilot, and then he has this like sort of like his own internet type deal that they call the Bat-Wave, which was kind of a tie-in to sell some toys at the time.
Yep.
Because all the toys came with Bat-Wave technology.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of, it's a little more high tech in some ways. Like he has it's also kind of like a modernized version in some ways of like a 60s Batman in some ways.
Sure.
He rides up a bat pole at one point, but it's like an electronic thing where he just kind of grabs it and it moves him up sort of by itself.
His breathing mask from Underwater was an homage
yes.
to some 60s Batman breathing mask.
Yes, so there's definitely touches of that. Even the Bat logo itself on his suit, or back to the yellow oval bat here, and that looks a little bit like the Adam West oval bat as well. So it definitely feel like they're pulling a little bit from here and there. His cape, I got to talk about hashtag cape movement on the new show here.
Lots of cape movement.
It's a very long cape. It like sweeps around him, and then it's like it drags on the ground. It's like it's a wonder he doesn't trip over himself.
It's very pointy.
But so that also I think contrasts some of the things where he's standing on a building or outside, and the wind is taking the cape, and it's just way out there.
It's a little exaggerated.
Definitely, and that comes from sort of the style of the show being sort of a little bit over exaggerated, and then
you have Joker, of course,
yes,
as a villain,
yes,
and Joker is it doesn't look like any Joker that I've seen before. They went on kind of one of their own with this. His hair is very it's sort of like a Harlequin hat, I guess, and then it has like 4 points to it. When you first meet him, he's wearing this straight jacket with sleeves that are longer than his arms, that are covering up his hands. He's not wearing shoes. He sort of behaves, I would say, like apish, I guess. He jumps around sort of like he uses his feet like hands at times, like gripping onto things. It's a very, very weird look. He's got these red eyes with yellow pupils, dark yellow teeth, real exaggerated. The animation style in and of itself, I'm not a huge fan of it. There are things about it that I like. I don't mind the way that Batman looks. Joker, I don't have a problem with them doing a different interpretation of him, but I'm not a huge fan of the animation style in and of itself. Batman's sort of... Bruce Wayne looks like somebody did a caricature of Mark Cuban. Remember? Like, he has this open shirt, and he's sitting at the courtside at a basketball game. I was like, he's Mark Cuban in this. And the characters, and like you said, it's a completely different style than what we're used to. It doesn't even... We talked last week with Brave and the Bold how that sort of mirrors and fits safely enough into the Bruce Timm, Jack Kirby influence style. This doesn't really fit into that style.
Yeah, even something like most of the men's jaw lines are, in the DCAU or even in Brave and the Bold are very square, very sort of streamlined. Like a lot of people's jaws in this series come to more of like a point, almost like a triangle. Yeah. And that again is some of the influence of Jeff Matsuda. If you ever watched the Jackie Chan cartoon, they looked very similar on that show. But it is different. It's not quite as streamlined. It's not quite as simple. There's a little bit more going on, which sometimes works to his advantage. And as far as some of the other visual elements, I really liked the scene where they introduced the Joker at first. The orderly is like checking to make sure all the inmates are in their cells, and he comes across the Joker, and you just see the Joker's face in silhouette, and you can see these creepy eyes, and then he sprays the gas, and his face just sort of lights up for a second as he's holding this Joker card in front of him.
That was good.
It's really, really well done. They also do this thing a few times during it where they'll play a little bit of a musical interlude, and then they'll do like 3 quick cuts as they zoom in on like the Joker's face, or on Batman at one point they do it similarly.
The orderly.
Yes, when Batman's sort of slowly turning around, rather than doing it all as one shot, it's like 3 really quick cuts. And I don't know that I don't love that, because it does make it feel a little jarring, but I can see that I see what they're going for.
Sure.
With it, and they're trying to really pop that moment when they do the full close-up. So again, it's just something that stuck out to me as different.
Sure. It is very, very different. I would say the thing that distracted me, and we commented on a couple of times, that I did not like the most was the fact that they did not have a consistent color for the sky of Gotham City. In the very first scene, the sky is green, which was...
like lime green, too.
It was a bad choice. It was a bad... It's like vomit green. Like, terrible. Not a fan of that. And then it's blue, and then it's red, and then it's purple, and then it's salmon colored, yellow,
lavender.
Yeah, it's
the many colored skies of Gotham City.
It was distracting.
That's on their tourist brochures. Come see our many different colored skies all over Gotham City.
I was not a fan of that. So giving it its fair shake. I didn't hate the Joker's look. I appreciate that they're going for something different. I'm just not a fan of the style in and of itself. And I think the sky thing actually was a detriment to it. So I gave it a 4 out of 10.
Wow.
For animation. Really,
well, you better get ready for that disagreement alarm.
Uh-oh.
I gave visuals 10 out of 10.
What?
I love the way this show looks. I love it's very atmospheric. Batman looks cool.
No,
you're wrong.
No,
I love the final fight scene in the in the air balloon. I think it's really clever. I love the design of this show. I think it's great.
No, you know what? It would have to be something outside of our normal DCAU universe in order to, for us to
truly disagree
on it.
On something?
To truly disagree on something. I not a fan of this at all. I think that you're wrong. I think that that Gotham City is I don't know. It's too light at times. There was a lot of daytime. Like Batman's supposed to work at night. It's all bright. It's not how Gotham should be. Like I said, there are portions that I appreciated. It's just not my style. I don't like the style. I don't like the way that the human beings looked, that were supposed to be actual humans, not like the Joker. So, anyway. All right. So, huge disagreement on that one.
The biggest in show history for a single category. I know that.
I'm going to go for sure. All right, so why don't we now move to plot? So our plot, Liam, involves the Joker. It really doesn't specifically kind of give us where his origins come from. In fact, it's left ambiguous.
Yes.
And he just kind of shows up in Arkham. He lets all of the inmates out. By the way, a couple who we can talk about in visuals, but happen to look like former Batman producers.
Yes.
Bruce Timm.
Alan Burnett. I think Paul Dini's in there somewhere.
Yeah,
there may have been a Glenn Murakami in there somewhere as well. There's a sort of a big spot, but yeah, Bruce Timm and then Alan Burnett walks right in front of the camera as they're doing the sort of the shot of all the inmates walking out of their cells. So.
I appreciated that.
That was nice. That was a nice little touch there.
But anyway, so he lets the inmates out and he tries to make Arkham his new home. Batman has an interaction with him. He escapes through some sort of undetermined detective work. Batman finds out where his old hideout was, and he goes and tracks him down there. They have a fight. He escapes in a hot air balloon that he's decided he's going to release Joker gas again for undetermined reasons, just because he's crazy, I guess.
He wants to put a smile on everyone's face,
right? And so he's gonna pop this giant balloon on a statue that has a sword sticking out of it.
The statue comes back in the series 3 or 4 times.
Does it?
Because at one point Joker tries to vandalize it and make it smile, I think.
They should have just torn it down after this episode, or whoever designed it should have realized that a giant point on the end of a statue
seems dangerous for like helicopters or other low-flying aircraft.
Nah, what's the worst that could happen? A man could pop a giant air balloon on it filled with laughing gas.
What are the odds, Frank?
So Batman and him have a fight. He sinks the balloon into the Gotham River and then releases the gas into the Gotham River, I guess with no sort of economical...
Hopefully the gas only affects humans.
Yes.
A lot of fish were floating by.
Yeah, let's hope there's no ecosystems that are affected by the release of the Joker toxin. And then the Joker is in Arkham Asylum at the end. So... yeah. What did you think of the plot? I thought it was just basic enough, and there wasn't a whole lot of depth to it. You have the sort of like pseudo-interesting storyline of Alfred being concerned that Batman isn't being Bruce Wayne enough.
Yeah, that's definitely a recurring theme of the series, is Alfred, if for no other reason that he knows that the less Bruce Wayne is around, the more people will start to put together that Batman and him could be the same person. As well as, that sort of classic Alfred motif of really kind of at his heart not wanting Bruce to do this with his life as a whole.
Right.
You also have the introduction of the two police detectives. You have Ethan Bennett, who we find out throughout the course of the episode is childhood best friends with Bruce. Mm-hmm. Later on in the series, spoiler alert, he becomes Clayface.
Oh, snap.
So Ethan Bennett is a completely original character that they created for the show. Mm-hmm. And as throughout the show, they sort of explain he kind of likes what Batman does and doesn't think he should be trying to arrest him, whereas his partner and the rest of the police force is very anti-Batman, so he sort of becomes like Batman's pseudo-ally, a pre-Commissioner Gordon. Kind of, and some of this does definitely take inspiration from the Batman Year One graphic novel that Frank Miller wrote years ago, of that sort of the one cop who sort of trusts Batman while everyone else is gunning for him.
That's a classic Batman story trope, I feel
like.
Whether it's Gordon or another cop, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and then you have the Ellen Yin, his new partner from Metropolis. We get a
little shout out to the other worlds or the other places in this Batman iteration.
And Ellen Yin, who is a tribute to the character Ellen Yindel from the, speaking of Frank Miller, of the Dark Knight Returns. She's the chief of police in those comic books and eventually in the animated movies they did just a couple of years ago. So they do a little bit of homage here and there, like we said in the visuals. There's Adam West homages in some of the characters. There are homages to other Batman projects, but yeah, overall I thought the plot is good. I don't think they didn't reinvent the wheel, as you mentioned. It's Joker wants to spray laughing gas everywhere.
Yep.
And so he tries.
Yep.
And I gave plot 5 out of 10. I think it's solid. I don't think it's bad in any way. And again, as an introduction, you had to introduce Batman, introduce Alfred, introduce the world, introduce Ethan Bennett, and introduce a villain all in 22 minutes. I thought they did a solid job with it. Not the greatest plot, not going to win any maybe awards for writing, but not bad either.
Yeah. I think I agree with pretty much everything you said. That's why I gave the exact score, 5 out of 10. It's fine for what they did. I didn't hate the episode. I think there was a lot going on. You're right. They had a lot they had to do that maybe they could have pushed some of that story. Maybe the Ethan Bennett stuff could have waited till episode 2 or 3. Maybe the stuff with Detective Yin could have waited an episode or 2.
Sure.
But it was obvious that they wanted to establish as much as they could in this little time frame here.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's not offensive. I didn't hate it. It just wasn't great by any means. So 5 out of 10. All right, so let's talk about music, Liam. I don't have a lot to say about music during the actual show. It's there. It plays sort of intro and outro of every scene. There's like a little...
the music, rather than anybody having like a traditional theme, the way the Joker or Penguin or somebody did in the old show, there's like a little refrain that'll play that'll sort of echo.
Mm-hmm.
And then that'll be it, and then there'll be dialogue, and then yes, as the scene is ending, they'll play like a little bit of a guitar strum.
So it's not It's not the same. Again, it's something completely different. It's its own show. Its music is not relied upon to set mood or to set to be a major player.
It's
with
more of a punctuation note than
Good
like
point.
a comma.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it. That said, I did give it a score of 7 out of 10, and I was struggling whether to give this just an average score and give a bonus point. I'm not giving a bonus point. I'm going to go and give it the score because the actual theme song, which is written by U2's Edge, is phenomenal.
Oh yeah,
and unforgettable. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, they only used it for the first season.
First two seasons,
and then they change it for some.
Yeah, they go to
reason.
like a weird like techno remix of the Adam West theme.
It's really bizarre. It was a really bizarre choice. Anyway, I think I was almost out of the show by that point. But I love this theme. Instantly memorable, easily playable. To play it back over and over again. Has a great little punctuation at the end with the voice saying the Batman. Great. Big fans of U2, obviously we are. So I gave about an extra 2 points, I think, for that. So my final score for music was 7 out of 10. What about you?
Mine was a very different 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Kind of for the same thing. Yeah, some of the chase scenes we do get more traditional music. It's very drum driven, which I appreciate because I play the drums. So I liked hearing that. But other than what we've mentioned, yes, there's those sort of refrains at the end of scenes. And as we mentioned in visuals, when they do those really sharp cuts as they're zooming in on something, you would get sort of almost like horror movie type music where the really quick, sudden notes of stuff. So again, it's just something they're doing differently than the previous show did. And,
right.
It may not be great. It's obviously not the same as a Shirley Walker composed live orchestra.
Sure.
But for the show and for the tone they're going for, I think it does work pretty well.
Absolutely. All right, last but not least, Liam, let's talk voice acting. Obviously, we're introduced to a brand new cast here. Let's go over briefly who are our players today and what do we know them from?
Yeah, so we know Rino Romano is Batman. He other comic book roles. He was Spider-Man on the very short-lived Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon.
We liked
that succeeded. I loved the visuals of that show. He had a cape, which I always appreciated.
I remember the cliffhanger. They
like the symbiotes unleash on the world, and that was the
cliffhanger. Yeah, and they never completed the show.
That was a bummer. But there was some cool stuff on that show. But yeah, he played Spider-Man on that show. Also voiced Spider-Man in the 2 PlayStation 1 era Spider-Man video games, which you and I spent countless hours playing.
Hours and hours.
Hours. Yes. So appreciate him. As a young Batman, I think he's fine. I think his best work comes later in the series. They sort of allow him to age throughout the series, certainly once they introduce Batgirl and Robin. So here he's still kind of supposed to be like youthful Bruce Wayne a little bit more. And it didn't feel like he quite knew how to play that yet. But again, episode 1, I think he does a solid job. We have Alistair Duncan as Alfred. It's tough for me because we've established who #myAlfred is.
Right.
So anyone,
who is not your Alfred,
right, is gonna be second best at best.
Sure.
I do really enjoy Alistair Duncan's performance as Alfred.
He's great.
He's funny. He I think punctuates there's an emotional scene right at the start of the episode where Bruce is making a wish on this cake and Alfred sort of comforts him as they start to speak about Bruce's parents.
Yep.
Like he has to do a few different things, and I think he's a very good Alfred.
Agreed.
From there we have probably most importantly Kevin Michael Richardson as the Joker.
All right, so this is a controversial one apparently.
Well, I think I don't know if it's the look or the voice actor people don't like for it. Maybe it's both.
Okay.
But people are very divisive. I probably about maybe 2 months ago now tweeted something when DC Universe announced they were adding this show, how much I enjoyed Kevin Michael Richardson's portrayal of the Joker. And a lot of people agree with me, but the people who disagree with me vehemently. They did not like Kevin Michael Richardson's performance. They didn't like the look. It's too out there. It's too crazy. I really enjoy Kevin Michael Richardson as the Joker.
Same.
I think he does a really solid job.
Same. I mean, he's doing it's Mark Hamill light. It's very in the vein of Mark Hamill's Joker. And if you closed your eyes, honestly, like if they needed a successor, if they needed somebody to come in because Mark Hamill wasn't available, I would say, all right, give me Kevin Michael Richardson because he's good. He gets the idea of the Joker's maniacal craziness, the insanity of the character, but he also understands the punctuation of he's the Joker.
Right.
Like he's funny too. Like and there's several lines in this episode that he delivers quite well, I think, including the final line where he talks about passing his gas.
His gas was passed by a party pooper. Is what he said.
So
I laughed and laughed and laughed. His delivery of that. Yeah, and I mean, he also, like, there's a little bit of nuance to it, much like Mark Hamill's, where he doesn't speak in the same tone of voice all the time. When he's happy, the voice is very high-pitched and over the top. When he's angry, he gets very gravelly and low, and of course, the laugh is important. His laugh is great.
Yeah.
And again, very much a varied type of laugh, much like Mark Hamill's was. So I got no complaints about Kevin Michael Richardson as the Joker. I enjoyed his performance very much.
Yeah.
And then just rounding out the cast, you have Steve Harris as Ethan Bennett. Does a fine job. Not a lot asked of him. Again, you're cramming in. He's Bruce's friend and also a detective that secretly likes the Batman. Right. And then you have Ellen Yin Ming-Na Wen, who played Mulan in Mulan, a little-known movie. There you go. And she's kind of just there to be someone to talk to.
She plays a bigger role from my recollection.
Definitely, especially like as we mentioned, once we get into those Clayface episodes, and she sort of ends up sliding into the role as Batman's partner on the Force later on in the series. So. Sure. She definitely has a role to play later on. But, yeah, I gave voice acting 7 out of 10. I think it's really good. There's not, again, I don't think Rino Romano is great here. And since he is Batman and this is a Batman show, if Batman's not great, I don't feel like you can go, super high on your score.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I went 7 out of 10. It's good. Like I said, I think certain people will get better as the series goes. But a good, solid outing for episode 1 here.
My score is exactly the same. 7 out of 10. And just a reminder, we don't discuss our scores before going on. We just happen to be brothers.
Yeah.
So I think that you hit on something really well there with Batman. He's still finding his footing, but one of the issues I had is he really doesn't differentiate his voice between Bruce Wayne and Batman.
No.
So as somebody, if Alfred is super concerned about people wondering if Bruce Wayne might possibly be Batman, he's not doing a good job of disguising it or doing himself any favors by just talking like Bruce Wayne when he's Batman. So, yeah. With that said, it's solid. The people that are there are fine, and it certainly didn't detract. I think Kevin Michael Richardson, like I said, is fantastic, and I think he brought the score up to a 7 for that reason. All right. So, with that, I think we should total up our scores, Liam. I think that brings me to a score of 23 out of 40.
And I am a little bit higher, a little bit further off, 28 out of 40.
Ooh, another... I don't know if that's a disagreement alarm or not. I mean, we didn't hate this. We didn't hate it.
I mean, the disagreement alarm was for the visuals argument.
Clearly.
But yeah, as far as overall scores, like I said, I enjoy this as a pilot episode for this series. It does a good job of introducing all the players, showing you a little bit of what the world is like, and showing you what the action will be like throughout the series. Most of the villains throughout the series are more physical threats to Batman. Like the Penguin does martial arts later on, and so there aren't as many Batman fighting henchmen scenes.
Bane looks like the Hulk.
Right, Bane is a giant monster in this series, so they definitely do some different things there, and the visuals and sort of the way that the villains everybody knows are portrayed are all done pretty differently, but. Yeah, I think I guess we can talk about rewatchability. I think this is a good place to start if you're curious about this series. A show like Brave and the Bold, I feel like you can jump around and just find an episode with the character you like and start there. But with this series, I think this does a better job of just introducing you to all the big players and sort of the general tone of the show. So I would say, yeah, if you're interested in watching The Batman, if you haven't watched it, I think this is probably the good place to start is with episode 1.
This is a jumping off point for sure. I don't know that I'm going to come back and watch this episode 10 more times in my life, like you would a Batman animated series episode. But I can absolutely, as far as viewing this, yeah, if you're gonna go down the path of The Batman, which it's a fine show, why not start here? Absolutely. All right, so that will start wrapping things up here. Thank you, as always, for joining us. If you like today's show, please do us a favor. Give us some feedback. Tweet Liam. He runs our Twitter account over at DCAU Review on Twitter. And he also would love to hear your feedback. Right, Liam?
Absolutely. Like I said, I've gotten some interesting feedback just in the once or twice I've mentioned the Batman in the past, so I imagine when people see we're doing this episode, we'll get some spirited debate. I know I've heard some people that really enjoyed this series, people that didn't like it so much, and I think a fair amount of people maybe just didn't watch it at the time, and I definitely think it's worth a watch. At least give yourself a few episodes to figure out if you like it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I look forward to hearing from people the things they liked about the show. Maybe I'll end up doing a poll about the Joker or something later on. But, yeah, definitely some discussions to be had here.
Most assuredly. All right. So I am Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.